Hey everyone, today we're talking Final Fantasy Commander precons. We're going to be going through playability, their value, and a couple singles I think you should keep your eye on. Let's get into it. Alright, so 4 precons coming out for Final Fantasy, and they're all really well done. This is the first time I think we've seen a lot of really solid playability come out of a set of precons in a long time, and it's especially great because this is technically a standard set, but we're seeing really good synergies like we saw in the 40k decks, like in the Lord of the Rings decks. So they've taken that outside IP, Universes Beyond approach to making these commander decks, but they've applied them to what is essentially a standard precon. Now, you're not paying standard precon prices, but at least the decks do play really well. As we critique and go through these decks, I just want you to be aware that they all play very well. Nothing here is unplayable. So that's really nice. I'm glad that we have 4 really good decks. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into the decks. First up, we've got Revival Trance. This is the Reanimator style Mardu deck. It's not really focused on reanimating big beaters, rather it's kind of a small creature reanimation engine. Every turn you're going to be churning stuff into the graveyard, pulling stuff back, getting little ETBs, little value here and there. So that's what this style of deck is doing. The commander allows you to do that very well. Terra, the face commander of this deck, is basically a one-stop shop for this milling engine. She mills you as well as returns stuff from the graveyard on combat damage. So you get all the pieces bundled up in the face commander of the deck, and she only costs 3 mana, so really efficient for that kind of stuff. Salus Rune Knight is the backup commander to her, and she also basically is just the engine for the deck. She lets you discard your hand and draw that many cards +1, so you can dump all your animation targets into the graveyard and then draw up a new hand to keep playing Magic with. Plus she turns into a beater the more and more you do the reanimation thing, so yeah, it's a pretty decent lieutenant. There's a lot of synergy between these two commanders here. Deck is going for about $80 US. Singles prices are about $55 for reprints, $32 for everything at $2 and up. We've got 8 $2 cards, 2 $5 cards, nothing over 10. Obviously, this is lower than we typically see in terms of reprint values from precons, but understand that there's 27 new cards in this deck, and that's kind of a theme throughout all of the decks. There's a ton of new cards, so a lot of the value, which is currently rated at 0. But since they are new cards, we're not going to be putting their prices in here because that would just be super skewed and kind of all over the place. So understand that the reprint value may just be lower than we typically see because we're not counting 30 cards in the deck. Notable reprints we are getting, though, in Revival Trance, we've got Reanimate at $7. We've got Graven Cairns at $5. We've got Ruinous Ultimatum at $4. Archfiend of Depravity at $3.50. And Rise of the Dark Realms at $3.30. So you can definitely see there's a solid reanimation package here going on. Looking at the baseline playability of this deck, I've broken all the cards, including the new ones, into their respective categories as best as I could do. And this is the breakdown of the deck. We've got 13 ramp cards. That's great. We've got 11.5 card advantage spells. That's pretty solid, especially if you consider the reanimation stuff going on. You don't really need as many card advantage spells going because you get to pull all the stuff out of your graveyard. That's really solid. Targeted removal is at 6. It's a little low. Mass removal is at 4. Higher than we typically see in precons, so that's decent, I would say. I'm fine. Like 3 is the minimum, so 4 is nice. We've got 37 lands. So that is the standard land count that WotC puts in there, so that is fine. 12 of those are tapped. That's on the high side. I really only like to see 10 tap lands at most, but those are some easy cuts out of your deck when you get a hold of it. We've got 22 cards with the main synergy, that's the reanimation stuff, and then we've got 10 cards in that utility slot. This is stuff that helps synergize with your game plan, so this can be mill cards and things like that, or it can just be stuff like a Swiftfoot Boots. Everything that I've seen in terms of how the cards and the makeup of the deck synergize well together. I don't see any glaring errors here. I think this is a solidly put together little deck. As I said, this isn't a huge beater reanimation deck, so don't go buying this if you're hoping for it to be that, because it won't be. It's definitely more of an engine deck, so if you're into that kind of recurring multiple little things out of your graveyard, I think this is a sweet deck. Also, something to note, this deck is all about Final Fantasy VI, so that is the only Final Fantasy game you're going to see in this deck. And the other thing to note is that for every single one of these decks, all the art is new, even the basics, just like the 40k stuff, just like the Lord of the Rings stuff. So all new art, which is really fantastic. I would say, yeah, if you want reanimation engine stuff, this is a perfect deck to pick up. Final note just on the overall deck stuff, if you are looking to buy these, understand that while the non-collector decks are going to get plenty of print runs, we got plenty of print runs for 40k, we got plenty for Lord of the Rings. That stuff had super high demand right at the beginning, and I think up until last year you could still get 40k decks for like $60. So understand that, you don't need to buy into the hype. The regular precons will get tons and tons of printings. Snag it for MSRP, you'll be okay. Just, be a little patient. Next deck up is Limit Break. This is the Final Fantasy VII deck featuring Cloud at the helm. This deck is all about equipment, but it's also got a creature 7 power or greater secondary theme to it. Essentially just smashing phase with a ton of either big creatures or well-equipped creatures or both. That is what you are trying to do with this deck. Cloud is at the helm here of the Naya equipment amalgamation, and he has haste. He costs 5 mana. He has whenever he enters, you can attach an equipment to him, so you get a little discount there in terms of, what would have a typical equipment cost. I mean, 5 mana is a lot, so I'm glad you get that there. And whenever he attacks, you get to draw a card for each equipped attacking creature you control, as well as if he has 7 power or greater, you get to make 2 tapped treasure tokens. So if you have him come in and you equip something to him that's at least giving him 3 power, then you're going to draw a card and make 2 tap treasure tokens. So you could potentially get a good discount on his rate right there. If you've got nothing going on, he's very expensive, but if you've got a little bit of a setup, I think you can make this work just fine. Backup commander here is Tifa Martial Artist. She only costs 4, 1 in Anaya, and she has melee, which means that whenever she attacks, for each opponent you are attacking, she gets +1/+1. She starts as a 4/4, so if you attack all 3 of your opponents, she's going to be a 7/7, and she will trigger herself, and her trigger basically gives you an extra combat step. Definitely makes more sense in the 99, I think, than at the helm of the deck, but if you just want to go all combat phases, all combats matter, she will basically get you a ton of extra combats off the rip. Looking at singles for this, we've got $117 in the singles. If we're just looking at the non-bulk stuff, it's 96. That's really, really nice. 14 cards above $2, 6 above 5, 2 above 10, and we've got 27 new cards in this deck as well. Highest value reprints we got in here, we've got Firelight Thicket at $21. We've got Clever Concealment at $18.83. We've got Sword of the Animist at $9. We've got Darksteel Plate at $8. And Conqueror's Flail at $6. Looking at playability, we've got 10.5 rand spells. That's solid. We've got 10.5 card draw spells. That's great too. Understand we've got some in the command zone as well, so that's really nice. We've got 3 targeted removal spells. That's really, really low, but to make up for it, we have 7 mass removal spells, including stuff like Vandal Blast, so be aware, it's not just creature wipes, we've got other bigger wipes in here too, but you've got a lot of mass removal in here, so that is making up for some of your targeted removal. 37 lands again, 11 of those being tapped, just a smidge high, not too big a deal though. 16 cards for the main game plan going on, and 20 for the utility stuff. Overall, if you can keep stuff going, and you can get your creatures getting big and getting strong and being all over 7 power, it's going to be a little clunkier, I think, than the Revival Trance, just because your commander is more expensive, and if he gets removed a few times before you really get off to the races, it's going to be tough. But if you're allowed time to set up and get your pieces online and do some of the other stuff going on in the deck, I think it will play great. Again, these are just minor critiques. I don't think any of these decks are bad. Put them in order. I think Revival is over this one in terms of ease of play, but hey, it's Final Fantasy VII. Everyone likes this one a lot more, so you're going to see it in the wild probably a lot more often than the rest of these. Third deck on the list is Counter Blitz. This one is Bant, and it's from Final Fantasy X. At the helm is Titus, Yuna's Guardian. He costs 3 mana, and at the beginning of combat, you can move a counter from a target creature you control to a second target creature you control. And whenever you do combat damage to a player with a creature that has a counter on it, or 1 or more, you get to draw a card and proliferate. That's pretty stinking strong. This deck is all about counters, shifting them around, doing weird mechanics with your counters, putting them on, taking them off, kind of manipulating some Saga stuff, making sure that you have a wide board of creatures with counters on them, proliferating a bunch of stuff. It's a lot of Bant Simic goodness to try and get the win here by basically overwhelming your opponents with a ton of value. I think Titus is really good. I think he's really efficient, but let's take a look at the other face commander. Yuna Grand Summoner is the second commander in this deck. She costs 4 mana and has tap, add 1 mana of any color, and when the next time you cast a creature spell, that creature enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on him, and whenever a permanent you control that has one or more counters on it. It goes to the graveyard. You can add that many +1/+1 counters to any target creature. So this lets you take saga counters, flying counters, lifelink counters, anything that would fall off that creature. You can add those to another creature in the form of +1/+1 counters. Notably, if you added an Ozolith in here, all those counters that would get taken off the creature get put on the Ozolith, but Yuna would still add that many +1/+ counters onto something else. So if it was all +1/+ counters, you'd actually kind of double it up, which is pretty cool. I don't think she's quite as good as Titus at the head of the deck, but still a very strong card, and I think it's a great include in the 99. Looking at reprint value here, we've got $95 for all the singles, $73 for everything that's not bulk. We've got 11 cards over $2. We've got 6 cards over 5, 2 over 10, and 25 new cards in this deck. Most expensive reprints being Damning Verdict at $19, Walking Ballista at $10, Resourceful Defense at $9, Bane of Progress at $7, and 3 Visits at $6. Taking a look at the playability breakdown, we've got 10 ramp spells. That's solid. 9 card draw spells. Again, maybe a little light, but we've got it in the command zone, so that's really nice. We've got 9 targeted removal spells. That's pretty good. And we've got 5 wipes. So that's decently high as well, especially for what we see for precons. Lands, again, 37 lands. But we've got the highest tap land count here. We're sitting at 14 tap lands, which is a little too rich for my blood. That would be the first thing I do when I come to this deck, is probably fix up the mana base a little bit, because I think the rest of it actually synergizes pretty well together. Main cards, we've got 15, and then utility cards, we've got 18. These numbers seem low for main and utility, but the cards are all over the place in what they're doing, pulling double duty and all. It was kind of hard to get a peg on what is specifically trying to do what. I mean, you see it on Titus himself. He's not doing just one thing. He's moving counters, he's proliferating and adding counters, he's drawing cards. Like, there's a whole wide range of cards that are pulling double, triple duty in this deck, so I think it'll be a lot of fun to play, just because you have to kind of figure out all the intricate kind of sidelines that you can take to maximize the value you're going to be getting out of it. Final deck up is Scions and Spellcraft. This is Final Fantasy XIV in an Esper theme, and is headed by Y'shtola, Knights Blessed. Y'shtola is a bonkers commander. She's a 2/4 for 4 Vigilance Cat Warlock, and at the beginning of your end step, if a player has lost 4 or more life, you draw a card. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell that costs 3 or more, you deal 2 damage to each opponent and gain 2 life. And if you drain your opponents enough, you get to draw a card. That's pretty friggin' busted. So if you're wondering how they toned this deck down, it's because they just didn't put a lot of non-creature spells in it, and especially not a ton of the busted ones. So that's how this deck is toned down. There's still plenty of cool synergy and value in here, but understand that this precon is not nearly maximizing the potential of this commander, and it's probably for a good thing, or else it would probably be really, really mean to play against, especially if you're going all the precons head-to-head. Backup commander for this deck is Grahatia, Scion Reborn. It costs 3 mana, it has lifelink, it's a 2/3, and says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may pay X life, where X is the spell's value. If you do, you create a 1/1 hero token, you put that many counters on it, and you can only do that once every turn. Not nearly as strong. I think Y'shtola is definitely the one you want to remain at the helm of this deck, or at the head of another Esper deck that will be much, much meaner than this one. Looking at the financial value of the reprints here, we've got $72 in the singles. Looking at the stuff that is non-bulk, it goes down to $48. We've got 6 cards over 2, we've got 4 over 5, and just 1 over 10. We do have 30 new cards in this deck, though. Notable reprints are Sunken Ruins at $22. We've got our Kalemancer's Map at $8, and then Snuff Out is actually on this list at $7, followed by Authority of Consuls at $5, and Crux of Fate rounding us out at $3.60. Looking at playability, we've got 11 ramp spells, solid. 12.5 card advantage spells, also very solid. 14 targeted removal spells, basically puts you in the driver's seat of controlling the board state pretty well. They did tone down the number of mass removal spells, though, so that is only sitting at a 3, which is still a pretty respectable number. Tap lands here is 11, which is all right. We're seeing 37 lands again, per usual, and we've got 16 cards in the main, 16 in the utility. As I said, I think there just needs to be more non-creature spells in this, and I think that number is reflecting that. Overall, these are 4 solid precons. I'd be happy playing any one of them. The ones that speak to mind, personally, I really like the Final Fantasy X. I love all that counter stuff and shenanigans. It's also my favorite of the Final Fantasies, because it's the one I grew up playing, so I'm very, very biased. Final things we're going to talk about is some notable cards I think that exist in this commander set. This doesn't mean that there aren't a bunch more. There are, but I'm only going to cover the ones that I really think you should keep an eye on, but I highly recommend, if you're into kind of buying and looking at cool singles, This commander set has a lot of cool singles in it, and there may be something that maybe I'm not covering because it's a little too niche for a certain deck type, but it may fit something that you play. So yeah, look through all the new cards. There's a lot of good stuff in here. These are just the ones that I think stood out to me. First up, we've got Edgar, Master Machinist. This is a 4-mana human artificer noble, and once during each of your turns, you can cast an artifact spell from your graveyard. If you cast it this way, it comes into play tapped. Whenever he attacks, he gets +X, where X is the greatest mana value among artifacts you control. I don't care at all about that second part. We're only focusing on that first bit, where he basically lets you play an artifact out of your graveyard once each of your turns. That's a super strong ability. We don't have anything quite like that. Closest stuff we have a bunch of sorceries and stuff that do reanimation for artifacts, whether it's Recommission or Boiler's Awakening, that kind of thing. A lot of those have mana value restrictions, like Dance of the Manse. Sun Titan lets you get anything, but it's 3 or less. This lets you play anything from your graveyard once a turn. You do have to pay for it, but I think the thing this reminds me of the most is Emery, Lurker of the Lock, but that's in blue. It's a tap ability. This one costs a little bit more. Emery can sometimes cost up to 1 just because she costs 1 less for every artifact you control. But still, 4 mana, you can play this. If this is late game too, you can play this and immediately use the ability for it. I think it's really good. You can even do like small value loops if you're playing stuff like Mishra's Bauble or Wayfarer's Bauble. You know, you get to draw a card for free every turn, or you get to ramp again for the normal price of Wayfarer's Bauble. Yeah, I think Edgar is actually pretty strong. We don't have anything quite like that, especially something that is as unrestrictive as this is for letting you cast stuff out of your graveyard. Next card on my list is Creole Baldian. This is a dwarf wizard for 2, and it's a 2/1 with lifelink, and says when you cast a non-creature spell, you can return a creature card of mana value equal to that spell back to your hand. If you were playing something really, really low to the ground, lots of 2s, lots of 1s, you know, trying to cycle stuff, maybe you've got aristocrat style, maybe you're just sacking creatures, doing kind of some stuff, and you've got a lot of non-creatures as well. Maybe it's a little too cute. Maybe you don't want to play just kind of a do-nothing thing in your Spellslinger deck. But I think if you're kind of that mix of you have cool utility creatures you want to leverage while also casting cool non-creature stuff, this card just lets you get them out of your graveyard while continuing your game plan of casting non-creature spells. Again, I don't think we've seen anything like this before, and 2 mana seems very, very efficient for this ability. Next up, we've got Summon Yojimbo, and this is a cool saga. 4 mana, when it enters, you can exile target artifact, enchantment, or tapped creature an opponent controls. So it hits a good amount of stuff. Even if you're just hitting artifacts and enchantments with this, I think it's worthwhile. Exiling is great. You can get rid of the One Ring and that kind of stuff. And then chapters 2 and 3, it's basically a ghostly prison effect. Those effects are really powerful. People do like playing them. So having that for 1 more mana isn't that big a deal, especially if you get a little extra utility out of this. Final chapter, you create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of opponents who control a creature 4 or greater. I don't know how much this is going to trigger. Maybe you get a treasure, maybe you get 2. It's very unlikely you get 2 or 3, but hey, if you get 1, I think that's totally fine. I put this on there not only because I think this is a cool card and a good card. I think the summon creatures are actually going to be a little underutilized or underrated when people first see them, but I think they're pretty strong, especially ones that can at least attack twice. So anything that has 4 or more counters on it, or if you're in a deck that can manipulate counters, if you got cards that pulls counters off stuff, you can really kind of mess around. If this is on 2 and you pull it back to 1, you get to exile something else again, or you can just crank it up to 2 if you need to put a propaganda effect onto play right now. There's a lot of manipulation stuff you can do with sagas, and having them also be creatures is really good. This one's got a great body on it, a 5/5 vigilance. This is a good beater. It can wear equipment pretty well. It's going to get in there pretty solidly. It's not like a ton of stuff can block this. Even if you can't attack with it, it's still a good defensive body, and it's giving you really, really nice defense between that ghostly prison effect and it just being a 5/5. It's removal, it's life prevention, and it can potentially ramp a little too. That's a lot of doing of stuff for 4 mana. I highly encourage you, if you're in a deck that can either abuse these sort of summon creatures or have something like enchantment, take a good look at all of the summons. I think they're really worthwhile taking a peek at. I think you have to look at it both through the lens of like, would I play this as a saga just on its own without the body, and then just look at the body itself. It's like, is this just a good rate for the body? If you're answering yes to both of these, that's a really, really good card. Next up, we've got Tataru Taro, and this card seems really, really strong. 2 mana legendary Dwarf Advisor. It's an 0/3, decent blocker. When it enters, you draw a card, and target opponent may also draw a card. If they do draw that card, you're going to create a tapped treasure token. And the next ability basically says whenever your opponent draws a card, when it isn't their turn, the first time it happens, you're going to make a tapped treasure token. This is a really powerful effect. It gets more powerful as you increase in power level, as do a lot of these 2 mana tax effects we see in white a lot of the time. This one hits so much stuff though. If your opponent is triggering a Smothering Tithe or a Rhystic Study, a Mystic Remora, just opting in someone's end step, this card is going to give you a tapped treasure. 2 mana, if this makes 1 treasure, if it makes 2 treasures, I think you're super happy. If this makes 4 or more treasures, I think you're sitting pretty. Like, that's really, really strong. I think this card is great, especially, as I said, you're going to be playing at high power tables where people are drawing stuff very often on opponents' turns. This card is really going to let you ramp up that mana for people just trying to execute game plans or drawing extra cards. After that, we've got Hermes, Overseer of Elpus, and this is basically a better Murmuring Mystic. If you've got Murmuring Mystic in your decks, you can go ahead and remove them unless you really want his creature types. Basically, this is a much better version of it. Murmuring Mystic only triggered on instants and sorceries and made a 1/1 bird. This one triggers on non-creature spells, so a lot more spell types are going to trigger this one, and it makes a 1/1 bird with vigilance as well. Also, whenever one of your birds attacks, you get to scry too. So, like, this is buying, like, I know it's not strictly better, but it's strictly better. Final card on my list is Trance, Seymours Butler. This is a 3 mana Elf Advisor, and it says each other non-token creature you control enters with a +1/+1 counter on it, and you can tap 1 and him, and you can proliferate X times, where X is the number of non-token creatures that have entered this turn. Now, does this go in any deck? No. Does this go in an Elf Ball deck where you're just plopping a ton of elves onto the battlefield? Yes, it absolutely does. And you get to proliferate a ton when you're playing this. So you just play a bunch of elves, tap him, and they come in with however many elves entered. If there was 6 elves, you get 6 counters on everything. That's pretty insane. If you're playing this in a Fin deck and you just play a bunch of 1/1 Death Touchers in one turn, and you've already got poison damage on people, you tap him, everyone else has 4 more poison on them. That's nuts. This proliferation rate is crazy good. Obviously, this stipulation comes with playing non-token creatures, but in a green deck where you're playing creatures most of the time, if you want counters on stuff, I highly, highly recommend taking a look at Trommel. Anyways, that's my coverage of the Commander precons. I think they're all really cool. I'm excited to get my hands on one of them. I really want the Final Fantasy X one, if you couldn't tell by all my gushing coverage of it. Even if you don't think it's the best one, it's the one I am most excited about. I want my man Titus. I need Yuna in my life. Let's get those together. I'm going to probably buy the Secret Lair DLC for that deck. One of the designers said that they put 2 swords in the Secret Lair that will fit perfectly in the deck, because obviously they couldn't put them in the deck, but hey, whatever. I'll just buy the DLC, I guess. Anyways, that's it for Commander Final Fantasy. These are very cool decks. Again, don't feel like you have to be a madman and rush out and snag the regular ones at crazy prices. They will print more of these. This price will come down as the hype comes back down, but they are really cool looking decks. I think they're going to play great, and I am also personally excited to snag one of these. That's all I got for you today. We'll be doing some more Commander stuff as I go through my deck list, so stay tuned for that. Hit the like and subscribe button if you like this. Let me know in the comments if you're looking to snag any of these decks, or if you're just looking to snag some of the cool singles that have come out in the Final Fantasy Commander set. We'll be covering the regular set once we get the full spoilers, but until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.